Hello, welcome to Class Time, your daily classroom for CSEC and CAPE students. You can watch this lesson real time on Television Jamaica's YouTube channel or One Spot Media. We're also live on gojamaica.com. If you have any questions on today's subject, you can send them in to Television Jamaica's Facebook page at Television Jamaica or Instagram at television_Jamaica or use the hashtag TVJClassTime. We want to see those questions. Today's lesson is CSEC Economics, and I am Abigail James. Today we'll be looking at resource allocation and economic systems. So last week, just by way of a recap, we looked at production costs and the cost curves. Now we're still in section 2 of the syllabus that looks specifically today at our topic, resource allocation and economic systems. So let's begin. So for our objectives today, we are going to explain the term resource allocation. We're going to also define the term economic systems, and we're going to define the types of economic systems. They are listed there: subsistent, command, free market, and mixed. We're also going to outline the characteristics or the features of each economic systems and look to explain some of the advantages and disadvantages of each economic system. Now, based on what we have done before, we realize that we utilize the factors of production, which is land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial skills, to make or to produce goods and services. Now, how we are going to utilize them refers to as resource allocation. So by way of explaining the term, it is simply the act of dividing the resources, the scarce resources that are available to produce the different goods and services to meet the needs and the wants of the society. Now, remember we said before that resources are scarce and the wants and the needs of the society are infinite. That means they are unlimited. And so a government, a society must decide how they are going to find a way to divide the resources that are available to meet these competing wants. Again, we have mentioned this before, but it comes into play here again. We have our resources. They are limited. And so as a society, we must answer these three basic questions. What are we going to produce? Are we going to produce more cars? Are we going to make available more food? Are we going to build more roads or schools or housing with the resources that we have? Then once that decision is made, how should these goods and services be produced? How to produce? What is the method of production? Is it going to be capital intensive, meaning that we're using a lot of machinery to do the work? Or is it labor intensive, where they're going to utilize more human capital, more manual labor to make the goods and services available? And the last question, for whom? Who will get these goods and services? And it's regardless of their income, because some goods and services may be produced, when we look at the economic systems later on, that some goods are luxury goods, and therefore only persons with certain amount of income will be able to afford them. While there are some goods and services that are there, that are produced to meet the basic needs of the society, and so everyone must be able to afford them. So again, in allocating our resources, we must answer the three basic questions: what to produce, how to produce, and for whom. Now, an economic system, by way of definition, is really now looking at the means by which the society or the government is going to organize and distribute the available resources to produce goods and services for the country. So they are looking at their land, they are looking at their labor and capital, and how they are going to allocate these resources to produce the goods and services for the country. So the term economic system is really looking at how we are going to regulate the factors of production, land, labor, and capital to satisfy the wants and needs of a society. All right, so we're going to jump into the first system, which is called the subsistent or the traditional economic system. Now, what you'll find with this system, that each community or society or household, they will produce the goods and services to satisfy their own needs. So what you will find is that each household will grow their own food. They will make their own clothes. They hunt for the food that they need, the meat that they need. So they hunt animals. They will go fishing in rivers and lakes and sea, right? They normally will build their houses with the material that is around them. So as you are thinking, yes, that was a very, what we'll call a primitive way of life then, but it worked because we'll find that they were able to supply the needs and the wants for their families, all right? So the subsistent or the traditional economic system was there as what we call a self-sufficient kind of economic system where persons did what they needed to provide for their needs and wants and for their families. So that one, there's a little mix up there. So in this type of economic system, we'll find that goods are shared among members of the community, and it encouraged what we call trading. So once they had a surplus of the goods and services that they produce. So for example, if I was about producing my tomatoes and my cabbage and my Scotch bonnet pepper, and I had a surplus because I had enough to supply, I would probably go to my neighbor and say, listen, I have some tomato and cabbage and some pepper, and they may be growing peas and other things. I'll probably have a chicken farm, and therefore we'll do what we call bartering, the exchange of goods for other goods. So you'll find that there wasn't any money per se. In this system, what they would do is exchange goods and services for goods and services. You also found that under this traditional system, there was little to no government involvement. So there were no regulations as it relates to what government stipulates in terms of what you can produce or cannot produce. So some of the examples there was before the 20th century, some section of South America and Asia. And we'll also find that in some rural areas in the Caribbean, they still operate as a subsistent system where they produce. So they would have their own little garden, they would have their own little farm, and they would share with their neighbors. I kind of like that very much, especially in these times. So what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of this subsistent or traditional economic system? The first one is that it creates advantage, is that it creates strong community ties and harmony. So you find that persons who are more neighborly, they live good because, you know, you want to be able to have that relationship where you can exchange your produce with your neighbors, all right? And what you also find is that only what is needed for survival is produced. Good? So whatever persons need, they utilize it. So you find that there was little wastage taking place. Disadvantages, however, is that there was a lack of variety in terms of goods and services available to individuals. what you will find, and what we mean by that, is that it goes down from generation to generation. So if my grandfather was a cassava farmer, it would come right down the line. The future generation would just be cassava producers. If they were just into pig rearing or chicken rearing or goat rearing, you'll find that that is what continues. So there wasn't much variety in that system. And the last disadvantage is that the method of production used was usually outdated, which led to what we call low productivity. And we talked about productivity last week. So you don't find much machinery being used, latest technology being used. Sometimes it's just your basic hoe and machete and so on. You don't find a lot of fancy irrigation systems taking place. Again, because these persons, they were just producing enough to satisfy their family needs, their family wants. All right? So let's move to the next economic system, what is called the command or the planned economic system. Now, this system, one of the features of this system is that the government own and control all of the productive activities in that society. Everything is totally under the dictatorship of the government. So what you will find is that the government own and control the factors of production, and they determine how the resources will be allocated amongst the goods that they must produce. They will dictate what goods they believe are necessity items, what goods are luxury items, and the food that must be produced. Also under this economic system is that the government determines how much must be produced and the items to be produced. So there was not much discussion taking place there. They would make or call the shots, so to speak, about what must be produced, and they also determine the distribution of wealth. Now, let us reason it. If they own the factors of production, and we know that if you put the factors of production to work and you get the rewards of the factors of production, the rewards is going back to whom? The owners of the factors of production. So we find that, that kind of system was quite rigid. Another name, or what you'll see in your text as you go along, is that the command or the planned economies are referred to as socialist or communist economies. And I know sometimes you probably hear these terms being thrown around, whether in the media or in discussion. Now you know where it is coming from. And the aim of these economies is that they wanted to create equality in the society where everyone worked and received the goods and services that they needed. All right, so it's really trying to make everyone in the society, so to speak, equal. There was supposed to be some amount of equity. Under this system, we also find that education and health is at a little to no cost, low income, housing is provided, and there's a low cost of food. Because as I said to you before, this is a situation where they need everyone to be on the same page in terms of equity. And what we find also is that entertainment, television, and newspaper was controlled by the government. All right? The examples are there, North Korea and Cuba. So we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more economics.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos...
It's here. Interactive classes for all ages on the School Time channel on onespotmedia.com. With a combination of live Zoom classes and recorded class time, Schools Not Out lessons, and numerous educational content, we've created a comprehensive 24-hour channel dedicated exclusively to educating our nation's youth. Early childhood through to primary, secondary and tertiary, it's one stop on one spot for education 24 hours. Brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information in association with Television Jamaica Limited.
Reduce your risk of viral illnesses like the flu and coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing with a tissue and dispose of it. Avoid close contact with anyone with a cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or the nearest health center and share your travel history. The flu and coronavirus can kill. Let's protect each other. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.
Welcome back. This is CSEC Economics. We were discussing resource allocation and economic systems, and specifically we were just at the features of the planned or the command economic system. And so the last 2 points we were there to say education and health under this system was at little or no cost, low income housing and low cost of food. And we also indicated that even entertainment was controlled by the government. Now let's look at some of the advantages. And you are saying, oh, miss, the advantages to the system? Yes, they are. All right, so what you find is that the necessity items were provided and available for all. Remember, one of the features is that the prices were usually very low. And for that specific reason, that everyone could have access to those goods and services. All right? What you also find is that there are no wastage of resources since the government decides what is to be produced. So there is no wastage at all under this system. Profits earned, they are used by the government to expand the production or to provide other social amenities such as schools and hospitals, roads for the society. And what you find again, mentioned again here, is that prices were usually low and income was more evenly distributed. Disadvantages, however, is that even though the government dictates what must be produced, if they are producing things or items that the society is not interested in, then you're going to find wastage of resources because they're going to produce it and persons do not want it. All right? So there's another thing in terms of disadvantage is that they say that goods and services may be of poor quality because sometimes mass production may lead to that, and the fact that they have to make the prices low and they are not motivated particularly by profit, then, not always the best material and technology is used in the production process. And you also find that there are very few choices for individuals under this system because, again, the government dictates what must be produced. Now let's look at another economic system. This one is called the free market or the laissez-faire. And I will not be calling that term very often. I don't want to twist my tongue. Now, under this economic system, you'll find that the consumer is king, meaning the consumer dictates what must be produced. So the manufacturers, the producers, they go by what the consumers are saying. Because what you will find is that because they, private individuals and organizations, own and control the factors of production, they are about making profit, earning that money, and so they are going to produce what people want. All right, so it's here that private individuals and organizations, they own and control the factors of production, and because they control the production process, they are also motivated by profit. And that makes sense. If you're about making money, then you're going to produce what is going to sell. So again, just remember that under this economic system, the consumer is king. So what you'll find, therefore, now that the prices of goods and services are usually high, right? So the consumers, because of, and we're going to go into it in a little bit, the competition for the goods and services will cause prices to be competitive. Under this system also, consumers are free to choose the goods and services to satisfy the wants and needs of their household, right? So they have choices here. In the previous economic system, under the plan or the command system, there was little to no choice. The government dictates. But here, private individuals are involved in the production and they are going to offer consumers a wide variety of goods and services to choose from. This economic system is also called capitalist, where private ownership and competition between the business drives the economy. So that competitive feeling, the advertising to say, oh, my product is better than that product because, or they will highlight the features of their product to say why consumers should go for their product and not for their competitors. Of course, it's to our advantage, as you will see. Now, the pricing mechanism, or how pricing is determined under this market, is through the interaction of the forces of demand and supply. So the consumers, they will drive the demand, what it is that they want, what kind of goods and services they need. And of course, the producers will do their utmost best to supply that demand. And that is for a later topic when we look at the whole interaction of demand and supply and how prices are determined in the market. So let's look at the advantages of this system. And the first one is there that consumers have a wide variety of goods and services to choose from. So, I mean, let us look, example, for toothpaste. Some persons probably like Colgate versus Lascaux or another brand, or who want the baking soda to whiten the teeth, all kind of things. They have choices. Producers are free to make goods and services that the consumers need. And so what you'll find is that there is little interaction of the government. They really rarely intervene into the market, and so competition between the businesses drives creativity, efficiency, and innovation. So firms are competing against each other. They want to offer to their consumers something that is different, so they get very creative, right? They will mix and match all kinds of features and get feedback from the consumers, what they want. And of course, that drives innovation and creativity in any economy. Disadvantages? Yes, there are. What you'll find is that some of the basic goods and services are not usually produced. And the reason for this is that those goods and services don't usually yield high profits. Because as I said before, under the plan system, the government will provide these basic goods and services so that everyone, regardless of your income level, you must be able to afford those goods and services. So private firms really will not produce those goods and services. Second disadvantage is that consumers may be exploited through high prices that are for goods and services that are essential that the government is not able to provide. So how is it, Miss, they just said that they don't provide certain basic things? I will just give you a quick example. Let us look at transportation. Now, the government provides transportation through the JUTC. It's owned and operated by the government. But they do not have enough buses to cover all the routes, and so they will give out what is called franchising to other entities, and you have other private persons. Now, the fare that you pay on JUTC is different from the fare that you pay on probably a coastal bus. You see where I'm getting? So even though it is a basic need, the prices are different because you want the service, all right? And it's not provided by the government. What you'll also find under this economic system, that the gap between the rich and the poor becomes very significant. There are some items that, based on the pricing, those who are of lower income levels will not be able to afford it, and so only the rich will be able to enjoy those kinds of goods and services. And this is our last economic system, the mixed economy. And from the term alone, you know what it is. It's a combination of two economic systems. So what you'll find under this system, you'll find features of the planned or command system and features of the free market system. And that's what most economies these days operate under a mixed economic system. So what are the features? You'll find that both the government and private individuals own and operate the factors of production, right? So they have, I wouldn't say it's equal, but they own factors of production, and so they will produce goods and services accordingly. Now, both the government and private individuals make decisions on what to produce, how to produce, and for whom. So you'll find that there's a balance now within the economy. The government will provide mostly the basic needs and necessities, and the private firms will provide the wants. Needs versus wants, right? You'll find, as I said before, that the government will provide essential goods and services for the citizens, such as health, education, transportation, roads, and other social welfare for the citizens. And that whole sector is referred to as the public sector. Where private individuals now own the resources and the businesses, they will provide other goods and services, not necessarily the basic things, but other goods and services, and they are referred to as the private sector. So just to stick there again, what the government and their entities and activities entails, they are referred to as the public sector, and private individuals owning factors of production and making their activities in the economy, they are referred to as the private sector. Now, what are some of the advantages? Because we have the involvement of the government in this economic system, they provide protection for the consumers against any form of unfair trading practices through laws and legislations. And I just put a few there on the screen. We have what we call our Consumer Affairs Commission. We have the Office of the Utilities Regulation, the OUR, and we have our Bureau of Standards of Jamaica. These are just some of the entities that are there to ensure that consumers are getting fair pricing, consumers are getting the goods and services in an acceptable form, they are safe for use and will not cause any form of harm to the consumers. So that's one of the major advantages, that with the involvement of the government in this mixed economic system, consumers are protected from unfair trading practices through laws and regulations. Another advantage is that both public and private sectors can cooperate to provide essential services through franchising, such as transportation and hospital services. And as I mentioned to you before, that JUTC is there, yes, as a government-owned entity for transportation, but they cannot provide enough buses and so on to cover all the routes in Jamaica and to go everywhere. So they franchise. And so that is what you will call a cooperation between public sector and private sector. Hospital services. There are some hospitals that are what we call public hospitals. Kingston Public Hospital, Spanish Town Hospital. But we have other hospitals, whether it's the Andrews Memorial or the Nuttall Hospital, they provide similar services, but we know that the prices at those hospitals will not be those at the KPH. All right? So persons who are able to afford the services will utilize those services. Then we have our disadvantages. And the first one here is that too much government intervention can discourage innovation by the private sector. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes there are what they call red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, things that the private sector have to go through to get registered and licensed and permits and so on. That sort of discourage innovation or makes the process very hard and slow, and so they may get discouraged in the market because of too much regulations and what we call in Jamaica red tape, too much things to go through. Another disadvantage is that the public sector services sometimes may not be sufficient, there may not be sufficient funding to make it efficient. Meaning, as we know, sometimes there's not enough resources in terms of funding, and so they may not be able to provide services that we think they should be doing. But now, I'm seeing a lot more innovation with the public sector in terms of paying taxes and so on online, and that I'm sure has alleviated a lot of stress in that department. So now it's time to do some questions, and I hope that you are paying attention and that you'll be able to manage the few questions that we have here before we go into our recap. So let's start. The first question here: which of the following practices are characteristics of a free economy? Private ownership of assets, central planning, price fixing or freedom of choice? So is your answer A, looking at 1 and 3, which is private ownership and price fixing, no? Or, yes, so your answer will be 1, private ownership of assets, and number 4, freedom of choice. So your answer there would be B. Let's go to another question. Which of the following is not a feature of the planned economy? All resources are owned by the state. Consumers' demand determine what the government produces. Prices are determined by the government, and the government determines how income is distributed. Giving you a few seconds. And I'm sure you have the right answer. The answer there is B also. Consumer demands determine what the government produces. That is not a feature of the plan. That's a feature of the free market. The third question. Which of the following does not describe an economic system? Communal, mixed, planned, or command? And yes, that one is quite obvious. The answer there is A, communal. That is not an economic system at all. Now, let us just look at this question. A question that I would deem to be a typical exam question. And we may not go through all the answers here today, but I just want you to be careful in terms of how you answer a question for exam. So it says here, list 3 types of economic systems. B, what are the 3 questions an economy must answer? C, differentiate between goods and services and give an example of each. And D, part D, discuss 3 benefits that may be derived from a free market system. Now, I have highlighted some terms that you must pay attention to. So if you're asked to list, that's quite easy. You're just going to put it down there in point form. And your 3 economic systems, you know the answer. You can either say subsistent or traditional, your planned economic system, your free market, or your mix. So we have 4, so any 3 of the 4, you will get your full 3 marks. It asks, what are the 3 questions an economy must answer? Again here, based on this, you can just state the answers there. What to produce, how to produce, and for whom. Good. Now it says for this one, differentiate. So you differentiate means that you're going to show why they are different. So goods and services, we looked at the last class. So we know that a good is a tangible item that you can touch, while services, it is not tangible, it is intangible. Don't forget the part that says give an example. So a good can be a bottle of soda, while services can be your hairdressing services, barbering, a spa treatment, or doing your transaction at the bank or online banking. Those are services. Now here is where sometimes our students, candidates, they do not earn full marks. Here it says discuss 3 benefits that may be derived from the free market. Discuss means that you are going to put some explanation on each point that you are going to make. So 3 benefits there, they are referring to 3 advantages. So you cannot, students, boys and girls, you cannot put it in point form and expect to get the full marks. You must say something on that point. So if you want to say one of the benefits of the free market is that their consumers have a wide variety of choices in terms of goods and services. Why? Why is that so? And you explain a little more. And you will do that for all your points so that you can maximize your full marks in the examination. So again, when you see discuss, do not put it in point form and leave it like that, like the cheese stand alone. I always say to myself, my students, don't drop it like tambourine and leave it. You must put some flesh onto your points. It is a discussion. All right? So I hope this tip will help you in your future exams. So let us recap what it is that we have done today. Today we looked at the term resource allocation. And we said that resource allocation is simply how we divide the factors of production to produce the goods and services that are needed within the economy. And we already know that the resources are scarce and the needs and the wants of a society, they are infinite. And so the government must choose what they're producing, how they're going to produce, and for whom. We looked at the 4 economic systems. That is the subsistent or the traditional economic system, the planned or the command economic system, the free market or the laissez-faire market system, and the mixed, that is a combination of both the command and the free market system. And we also looked at their various advantages and disadvantages of those systems. All right? So what I want you to do to continue to read your texts and to be with your teachers. Feel free to ask them questions. In this time, online classes may not be easy, but I crave your patience as we go through this whole process until we can meet in classrooms face to face once again. So keep calm and study hard. If you have any questions on what we have done today, send them in to our various platforms and we'll answer them for you. Until next time, I am Abigail James. Up next, CSEC Geography.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.
It's here. Interactive classes for all ages on the School Time channel on onespotmedia.com. With a combination of live Zoom classes and recorded class time, Schools Not Out lessons, and numerous educational content, we've created a comprehensive 24-hour channel dedicated exclusively to educating our nation's youth. Early childhood through to primary, secondary and tertiary, it's one stop on one spot for education 24 hours. Brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information in association with Television Jamaica Limited.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.
Welcome back to Class Time, your daily classroom for CSEC and CAPE subjects. Today, we'll be discussing CSEC geography, and our topic will concentrate on the food processing industry. I am Dr. Robert Kinlock. Now, our lesson today has a few objectives. Our main goal will be to focus on defining the concept of food processing. We are also going to be identifying some of the common methods for food processing, and we're going to also attempt to identify the main food processing industries in the Caribbean. Then finally, we're going to get into an explanation of some of the factors that influence food processing industries. Now you will notice that there are several connections between the content discussed today and what we would have done in the previous weeks. This content essentially builds on that content. Last week, we discussed the primary industry, and this week, we're going to be discussing an activity that is situated primarily in the secondary industry. Now, when we think about food processing, what comes to mind? Food processing really refers to any method that is used to convert fresh food into a food product by either, it could be through various processes. So you could either dry the food, you could can the food, you could subject it to various forms of heat, add chemicals to it. And this could be in an effort to enhance the shelf. It's usually in an effort to enhance the shelf life of this product, to enhance the nutritional value, to enhance the taste of the product, right? To combine the product with other products, for example. So various processes are involved in the processing of food. These processes are largely affected by, things like the cost of the commodities. It's also affected to a large extent by the demands of the market and even the availability of the food. So we'll get into some of those factors in a second. But why is it important for us to process food? Food is processed for us to preserve it so that we can add value to it before it is sold. The food processing industry is also very, very important, and much of this discussion today will be situated within the context of the Caribbean. The Caribbean food processing industry is one of the main case studies for your syllabus. You also have to compare it to the food processing industry in Singapore, but we'll not be going into that comparison today. Our focus today will be on the Caribbean. So, of course, in the region, the food processing industry employs several individuals. In Trinidad alone, it employs about 13,000 individuals. The food processing industry is also very important as it relates to a word that I always use every week, food security. It gives us access to, or it provides the food that we need for adequate, safe, healthy food, right? And sometimes not so healthy food, because a lot of the unhealthy food is also food that is considered to be very, very highly processed. Now, at this point, I'm gonna pause for a second. I want to ask you a simple question. The question is, which of the following classifications most appropriately describes the activities of the food processing industry? Which are the following industrial classifications? Would you say that the food processing industry is a part of the primary, the secondary, the tertiary, or the quaternary sector? And as you think about your answer, I also want you to think a little bit about why you have chosen this response. So I'll give you 2 seconds to think about it. And you probably didn't even need 2 seconds, because I know most of you were jumping out of your seats and saying it was a part of the secondary industry, right? It is. And why is it considered to be a part of the secondary industry? So the answer would be B, secondary. But why? And it is considered to be a part of the secondary industry because it directly harnesses products that are produced in the primary sector. Remember that we said that the primary sector is primarily engaged in the extraction of commodities or raw materials from the earth. So agriculture is a primary sector. Mining is a primary sector, right? And the raw materials from agriculture, those represent the primary commodities that are then used in the secondary industry. Now, this is the food industry, the food processing industry is a part of the manufacturing sector, because after all, we are manufacturing products and commodities for the consumption of the market, for the market to consume. So, if you guessed B, you would have been correct. Now, there are various methods used to preserve food. And all of these methods are really designed to extend the shelf life of food. Obviously, if we can extend the shelf life of food, it means that the distribution of the food the population will have better access to food. If food can stay on the shelf a little bit longer, if it can stay in your kitchen a little bit longer, you'll spend less time going to the supermarket to make multiple trips for food. Now, there are various methods that are used to extend the shelf life of food and in the food processing industry generally. Now, I'm only going to talk about 4 of these methods. These methods are canning, drying, salting, and smoking. Now, the first method is extremely common. I'm sure everybody would have seen this, right? We all use canned products, right? Although some people have actually warned against the use of canned products, sometimes because of the preservatives and so that are in these canned goods. And canned products are usually very highly processed foods as well. So there's some health implications there. But these are foods that are very, very commonly consumed. Now, for canning, food is heated to a very high temperature. This process is called pasteurization. And the food is then packed in a airtight container, an airtight can. Sometimes jars are even used, and that is also considered a form of canning. So glass jars might be used, and that could be considered an expression of canning as well. Now, heat is very, very critical in this process because heat inhibits microbial growth. It is these microbes that actually cause food to spoil. It is also important that the containers are airtight because once air gets into that container, microbes travel in the air, and these can be potentially damaging to the quality of food. It can significantly compromise the quality of the food. And so if that happens, then it's likely that we'll get sick if we consume this food. So canning the food is one way of keeping the food clean. And of course, because it is sealed, it preserves that quality and the shelf life. So you'll see some images here of a canning factory, some cans, food being put into cans at a factory, and then of course common products that you would have seen on your shelf. Now another commonly used method is drying. And all the methods which follow, unlike canning, all the other methods that I'm going to talk about really focus on dehydration of food, and that dehydration is done in different ways. So drying of food is a method of extracting the water from the food. So you need to remove enough moisture from the food to inhibit the growth of things like bacteria, yeast, and molds, right? So again, drying the food inhibits microbial growth, and so when that occurs, our food can have a longer shelf life. A commonly consumed dried food that many of you like is raisins, for example, right? So that food has been essentially dehydrated. When we buy prunes in the supermarkets, prunes in boxes and stuff, packaged like that, those are also dehydrated. Some of the more commonly consumed dehydrated foods that we'll see on our supermarket shelves. I don't see this one so commonly here, but you can get dried apples and even mangoes and all sorts of different fruits can be preserved, packaged as dried food. Now, another technique of food preservation is salting. Yep. And this is probably the one that everybody should be familiar with. That picture on the left, it's the right of your screen, is a picture of saltfish. And everybody in Jamaica knows what saltfish is. Don't know if everybody knows, however, what the process that is involved in this type of food preservation. So, and it is really simple. What happens here is that the meat is actually salted. And what that does is that through the process of osmosis, moisture is extracted from the cells of this food, of this commodity, of the fish, and so of the meat. And so and it also extracts a lot of moisture through osmotic processes. A lot of moisture is also extracted from the cells of bacteria and all of these other microbes that could be in the food. And so again, we're taking moisture out of the food, and that moisture, essentially, the lack of moisture inhibits microbial growth. So one other method of preservation is smoking. And smoking also is a process whereby a lot of moisture is sometimes extracted from the food as well. But more importantly here, smoking involves the heat and chemical treatment of food. So it treats the food with a lot of heat and chemicals to, again, inhibit the microbial growth. Some of the common smoked foods that we might consume here would be like we see a lot of smoked sausages on the shelves. In the Caribbean, we do a lot of smoked fish, right? Smoked herring and all of these things. You might also see even the hams that you might consume at Christmas time. A lot of those hams are smoked and chemically treated. And it is through this treatment that we can actually preserve the shelf life of the meat. So various processes are involved in the processing of food. And I would also add that as it relates to liquids and other things, we also have processes taking place there, fermentation, and we do, there are other things that are used. There are other food processes that we have not covered, right? So I'm just focusing on these four, which are some of the four most common methods of food processing. Now, there are various factors that influence the location of the food processing industry in the Caribbean. And these factors are sometimes related to the nature of the raw material. They're related also to the location of the markets. They might also be related to just the cost of and the hassle associated with getting one component of that raw material in the production process, or even the people getting access to the people that you need for the production process. All of these factors combine to shape the location or to influence the location of the food processing industry. And I'm going to be getting into some of these factors. Now, as I get into some of these factors, I want you to think about any food processing industry that you have studied or had. If you haven't studied it yet, if you're eating a banana chips now in front of a pack of banana chips in front of the television now, I want you to think about where that food came from, right? Where did it start? I want you to also think about some of these factors in relation to the foods that you consume, right? So I'm going to be giving you some very concrete examples in a second, and I just want you to kind of situate it within your own experiences. So first, raw materials are very, very important as it relates to the food processing industry. If a raw material is bulky, that often means that there are a lot of challenges in transporting that good to the location that it needs to be processed. And so, bulky raw materials, also raw materials that are highly perishable, those raw materials tend to be located closer to those plants tend to be located closer to the source. So, a good example of that is sugar, or maybe I should, the production of sugar, which comes from sugar cane, of course. Now, sugar and rum are products that are formed from the processing of sugar cane. And these sugarcane refineries in Jamaica are located close to where sugarcane is grown, right? Now, our sugar industry has experienced several challenges in recent years. We're going to be touching a little bit on some of those at the end of our lecture. But what I want you to understand is that if you look at most of our sugar plants, or of our sugar plantations, I should say, a sugar factory is located on nearly all of them. Also, our largest rum factory, Appleton Rum Factory, that factory is located also close to sugar factory, the sugar plantation, simply because that sugar is a primary raw material. That sugar cane, rather, is a primary raw material in that production process. It is a very, very important raw material. But because the sugar cane is a bulky commodity, which is very, very hard to transport, then it means that it makes more economic sense for these commodities to be located closer to the factory. So, in my next slide, you will see a map of Jamaica showing the distribution of sugar plantations across the island. Now, it is not so, I'm realizing that on the screen it's not very easy to spot some of the factories. But the factories are indicated by the red stars and the black stars, right? So most of them are red stars, and you'll notice in areas like Worthy Park, for example, there's a factory there. In Bernard Lodge, there's a factory there. Money Musk in Clarendon. So Bernard Lodge is in St. Catherine, and Worthy Park, those are common sugar estates in St. Catherine. Money Musk in Clarendon, and then we can go over all the way over to the western end of the island in Westmoreland, where we have a very large sugar plantation, the Frome Sugar Estate, right? And of course, historically, these factories were located on the estate. Now, so another factor that has quite a significant influence on food processing in the Caribbean is transport and accessibility. Now, transportation is important when we need to obtain the supply of raw materials and also in terms of getting our goods to the market. Now, in some cases, food processing industries are import-export industries. And because they're import-export industries, this means that these industries need to be located close to the ports. Why? Because some of them, they import their raw materials, various components in the production process, so they import it. And instead of moving that commodity around or to a far distance to process, they process it in areas that are relatively accessible, and they also package it and then export that commodity to markets, to international markets. So we export commodities. I've been in the United States and seen, for example, Grace corned beef on the shelf. And you might see other Jamaican commodities there. So a relatively close location, a location within an area that is relatively close to an export site, a port, that also presents a kind of favorable location for the food processing industry. Now, as I had mentioned also, that they also import a lot of raw materials. So what you'll find is that some commodities like wheat, for example, that's imported, and because of course we don't grow it locally, and it is processed at locations like the Jamaica Flour Mills, and some of it is and most of it is actually distributed on our local market. Now, as it relates to transport, we can conceptualize this point about transport in two different ways. First, we can look at it like with regards to international versus local production and international export versus the commodities that are being imported. We can also look at it as it relates to a local distribution of the goods. So when this good is produced, transportation is also necessary for us to get this good to the market. And as we try to get this good to the market, it means that factories might want to be located along areas that are particularly accessible, favorable transportation routes. Transportation can also even impact the supply of raw materials. So let us say that an industry is dependent heavily on coffee beans, right? So the processing of coffee. In Jamaica, for example, a lot of our coffee is grown in the Blue Mountains. We have other coffee grown in other areas, in Frankfield, in Clarendon, and those other areas. So we do have, quite extensive coffee production, and in fact, our coffee production is amongst the largest or most significant in the region. But let us say, for a particular reason, the supply of coffee to that location, to the coffee processing plants closer to the ports. Let us say that like a road has been, a road has broken away or something like that, right? That is another factor, right? So the transportation has actually been, the transportation route has been affected. And so when we think about these factors, we also think about things that can affect what we call the supply chain, right? So if that supply chain is broken by, some, factor, some negative factor, just the other day we had a large landslide that took away sections of that main road I think it was just outside Garden Town. And so that too is possibly going to affect the supply chain there. It's going to affect the supply of this raw material to the factory. And so it is important for factories for transportation routes provide a very, very necessary and important component in the location process. Now, this is just a satellite image showing you the location of the Jamaica flour mills. As I had mentioned before, the Jamaica flour mills depends very, very heavily on imports, right? So its main raw material is imported, and it is processed right at the port there and then distributed. It is also in a favorable location because of its access or proximity to the market. Now, the Jamaica flour mills is located in Kingston. That plant is located along, I believe it's Windward Road in Kingston, and that's in the southern section, southwestern section southeastern section of the city, and that has a very, very easy. It provides very easy access to the main markets. Now, another factor that is influencing the location of industries is the quality and even the quantity of the labor force. Now, when we think about it, for an industry to operate, we need a skilled labor force. Now, the food processing industry employs thousands of people, and you would imagine, because of the complexities that are involved in this industry, they need people to fulfill a myriad of various roles. Now, some of the occupations involved in the food processing industry range from people like who would be sorting or peeling fruits or picking, So when the crops come from are delivered from directly from a farm or something like that, you have people there that are sorting the food, sifting to ensure that quality control and certain standards are maintained, right? They want quality foods. Then you also have people in the industry like chemical engineers or microbiologists who oversee the preservation and other aspects of the food process. You have people like the mechanical engineers that deal with the machinery. You have people that are involved in the production and the distribution of the goods, truckers, all sorts of different entities. And so the food processing industry is actually a very, very complex industry with several layers, and it requires individuals who fulfill various roles. For that reason, the food processing industry is it's a labor-intensive industry. So it employs quite a few people. And one of the benefits is that it might decrease labor pressures in a country, right? So it might decrease unemployment levels. So it therefore means that food processing industries sometimes tend to be located in areas where they can get this diversity of skill sets, where they can get all of these people who are engineers, who are, the pickers, who are there to play various roles in the industry. And so being located in an urban area is sometimes very favorable or advantageous to the industry. So that also influences that. Now, another factor influencing, another feature of an urban space that makes these areas sometimes favorable to the food processing industry is the fact that they provide very significant markets. Now, processed food is often sold on either a domestic market, meaning it is sold locally to local consumers like you guys, so food that's produced in Jamaica, sold in Jamaica, or it is sold on the international market. Now, for those for those foods that are sold domestically, sometimes proximity to the market is very important. If you are located, with good access to Kingston, then of course Kingston, it might be the area where the Kingston might be the area that has most of your market, and so it will provide a favorable location for you. Now, in both indirect and direct ways, environmental conditions also influence food processing industries. Remember, food processing industries rely quite significantly on food. And where do we derive food? Food is directly dependent on environmental conditions, right? Certain crops can only grow because of the conditions in particular areas. And so the local climate and other environmental conditions influence where this food is produced. And sometimes because of the type of food that is produced, sometimes that type of food can actually influence the location of the plant because it can actually influence the location of the plant because of the nature of that food, right? So if the food is a bulky commodity, as I had mentioned earlier, like for example, sugarcane has particular environmental conditions for growth, right? So it needs, flat land, fertile soils, it needs a supply of rainfall and stuff like that. And so these conditions are located along many of the coastal plains in Jamaica that bring down a lot of alluvial deposits. And when I say alluvial, I'm talking about a lot of deposits from streams and rivers and stuff like that, that have deposited over years a lot of this fertile soil on which many of our sugar plantations have been established. And so because of these environmental conditions, our factories have been, because the factories are tied to the raw material, the factories are also located in these areas. And so environmental conditions can, in a sense, influence the location. Location of food processing industries might also be influenced by the supply of energy. Energy is very important. If you think about it, a country that has a cheap supply of energy is more likely to make greater profits on their food. They can keep their factories running for a much longer period of time. Their outputs can increase, right? And so we've seen this in places like Trinidad, where food processing, Trinidad has benefited, their food processing industry has benefited significantly from this. In fact, a lot of the snacks that we consume on our local shelves are actually originated in Trinidad and Tobago. So all of these sunshine snacks and some of these examples that I have in the image there, a lot of those are from Trinidad and Tobago. And it is because of this reliable energy supply. Now, there are certain trends that have been taking place in the food industry in recent periods, and I'm going to talk about some of those, and then I'm going to get into some of the challenges that the food processing industry is actually facing. Now, Caribbean food processing is based on imported raw materials. So, for example, in Barbados, powdered milk is imported from New Zealand, and it is processed into condensed milk or evaporated milk and using other commodity to make other commodities like yogurt. And so this is one of the trends that are particularly pervasive in the Caribbean region, are very dominant in the Caribbean region. We do import a lot of our raw materials, a lot of our inputs into the food production process. quite often what is imported might not necessarily be the commodity itself that we are processing, although that does happen but we import a lot of the ingredients used to process the food. So things like a lot of the preservatives, for example, and other things designed to enhance the taste of the food or the shelf life, right? Now, while a lot of the factories that are involved in the food production process are large factories, we actually have a lot of small-scale cottage industries. And these industries employ very few workers, sometimes just 2 workers, or it could be just an individual that is doing their own food production at home, processing, making natural juices in their kitchen, something like that. But what we have is the expansion of these cottage industries that employ just a small staff, and many of these cottage industries may not be as heavily mechanized as some of the large food processing industries. But nevertheless, it is a trend that we are seeing in the region, the emergence of these industries. Now, the food processing industry has experienced several challenges, and I'm just going to talk briefly about 3 of these challenges. One challenge is the cost of imported raw materials. This has affected the overall production costs. So raw material, all of these ingredients that are necessary for the production process, sometimes these materials are more or less available, and that can affect the cost of production. And that will in turn, because of course we're importing some of these ingredients, it means that it can affect the end cost to the consumer. Now, another thing that affects our food processing industry is the supply of agricultural commodities. So a lot of the crops that we need for the processing, these can be affected, and if that supply is affected, then our production process, the processing, will also be affected. And we have seen where sometimes our food processing industry has been susceptible to or has experienced the effects of price fluctuations and stuff like that in the cost as it relates to major commodities and so. And sometimes what these food processing plants do, particularly the larger ones, is that they will try to lock a producer, which is a farmer, so into a particular pricing arrangement for an extended period of time. So sometimes it might be 1 year, or a few months, or even more, depending on the arrangement that processor has with the farmer. Now, when they lock these people into these agreements, it doesn't mean that they will always have a reliable supply. Sometimes the supplier might not be able to supply it simply because, a flood event happened, a hurricane happened, drought happened, and that really might impact the cost of these commodities. A good example of that is sweet pepper. In 2019, we had a very bad drought that impacted the production of sweet pepper on our island. And we've also had episodes where lettuce has been scarce and all sorts of different stuff. And so if these were commodities that are involved in the food processing industry, then of course that would certainly affect that industry. There's also increased competition from processors in other regions who are able to process food more efficiently at lower cost. And because their production cost is lower, it means that they will be able to, essentially outcompete us, put their goods on the shelf at a cheaper cost, thereby affecting Caribbean producers. Now, in the Caribbean, we have been subject to the importation of a lot of highly processed foods from places like China, from the Middle East, from India, from all over the world. And these commodities present a challenge to the food processing sector locally and regionally. Now, I'm going to get into a question quickly. Now, and this question is, why is the food processing industry one of the most common manufacturing industries, that should have been industries, in the Caribbean? Do you think it's because there are no mineral reserves, or because agricultural raw materials are so abundant or readily available? Or is it because food processing does not require imported fuel? Or do you think it is because it is cheaper to process local agricultural material than to import food? This one is a little bit tricky. But if you guessed B, then you would have been correct. It is because agricultural materials are readily available. It is not cheaper to process local agricultural material, and oftentimes imported food is actually comes to the consumer at a cheaper cost. You would also understand that that option of there are no mineral reserves, we have a lot of mineral reserves, and so that's not a factor. So, folks, that is it for today's lesson. If you have any questions, send them to the Ministry of Education and to Television Jamaica social media pages. I am Dr. Robert Kinlock. Up next is Cape Management of Business. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching. Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.
It's here. Interactive classes for all ages on the School Time channel on onespotmedia.com. With a combination of live Zoom classes and recorded class time, Schools Not Out lessons, and numerous educational content, we've created a comprehensive 24-hour channel dedicated exclusively to educating our nation's youth. Early childhood through to primary, secondary and tertiary, it's one stop on one spot for education 24 hours. Brought to you by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information in association with Television Jamaica Limited.
Hello, we're back with more CAPE Management of Business. We'll be continuing our journey today looking at inventory management. I'm Chrisisha Taylor. Okay, so we're looking today at inventory management. So we're gonna dive right into our learning objectives for today's lesson. At the end of the lesson, students should be able to discuss the importance of holding inventory, discuss the importance of inventory control systems, to explain the benefits of inventory management systems, as well as to examine the necessary requirements for effective inventory management. All right, so what is inventory management? Let us look at an introductory video. Before we look at a definition, we're going to be looking at just a short introductory video so that you can better able to tell us what you think the definition for inventory management is. So let us go ahead now and listen to the video. Let us watch the video.
Good inventory management means you have to have the right amount of product at the right time, at the right place, at the right price. Sounds easy, right? Actually, it's a really complicated balancing act. Just think about it. Getting the right amount of product means you've got to forecast the demand just right. If 20 customers want product A next week, you've got to have 20 pieces in stock so they all go away satisfied and come back for more. Getting the time right means you can't leave your customers waiting and have your products arrive 1 week later. Nor can you have them arriving at your warehouse 5 states away. That's definitely not the right place. When it comes to getting the price right, how many items do you need to buy before your supplier gives you free shipping? Are the savings worth it? When it comes to getting your inventory just right, you'll need to think of all of these factors and what they mean for your business. And when you do, you'll find that you're practicing good inventory management.
All right, so that short video was just a little synopsis of what inventory management is. And that video is from YouTube. All right, so we're going to look now at a defined definition for what inventory management is. And then we're going to look back at the video to see if it goes hand in hand with the definition here. So inventory, or what we call stock. So if you hear stock, if you hear inventory, we're talking about the very same thing, all right? It is an important part of any business. Inventory refers to any item or resources owned by the business. So this is an asset to the business, of course, because you own whatever asset it is. This is material that the firm obtains in advance of need, holds until it is needed, and then consumes or incorporates into a product. So from the video, we realize that we're looking at how is it that we can control what we have in stock, because you don't want it to be a case where as a business owner, you don't know how many stock you have in the warehouse. So if it is a case where your customers come in, you can provide for them, of course, so they're satisfied. So when they come in and purchase whatever item, whatever good, you have it there readily available for them. So we're looking at inventory management. Remember now, we need to know how to manage what we have in stock, because going into business, we're here to make a profit. So you want to ensure that you rise above it, right? So you're a successful business in the long run. All right. So what are some functions? Because we already know what inventory management is, right? What are some functions of inventory? Let us look at them. Smooth seasonal production requirements. So you're looking at the different seasons, because remember now we're near to the Christmas season, so therefore certain goods, certain products your company will want to basically provide for customers, because you're looking at that type of season where you're gonna need Christmas tree. Right? So you want to ensure that if you're a business who provide Christmas tree, you have Christmas trees in stock. So if your customers should come in, because you know decoration and everything, just the whole mellow feeling, you have the Christmas tree readily available for your customers. Protect against stockouts. What is stockouts? Anybody know what stockouts is from the term there? Very good answer. All right, so we're looking at stock out, we're looking at inventory. So you want to ensure that you have your stocks in the company. So if it is a case where customers should come and purchase impromptu, of course, because you're going to have new customers coming into your business, you want to ensure that you always have stocks in the company. So you don't have to tell your customers that, boy, you know that today we ran out of the item that you want, so we're going to have to look into purchasing, because you're going to lose your customer if that should happen. So you want to ensure that you don't have stockouts, all right? Hedge against price increases, because we're looking into having enough inventory, controlling what we have in the company. So therefore, we're also going to look back at pricing. So you remember now we're going to be buying in bulk. And buying in bulk, we're basically looking at economies of scale. So the more you buy, the less you will have to pay. So if, for example, you should go to purchase, say, for example, 50 units versus 500 units. You know that for the 500 units, you're going to pay less because that is more goods that you're purchasing. So therefore, for the price there, it's a win-win for you because you're getting discounts, all right? Another one, to decouple or to separate various parts of the production process. Remember last class we looked at the different methods of production: job, batch, and flow. So remember now we are looking into the factory because we're making goods. So you have different processes that you will have to go through in order for you to come up with the final product. So you want to ensure that you look into the different production processes to ensure that at the end of the day, you are satisfying all your customers because you are basically providing quality goods to them, right? Because that's what we want to know as customers. We go in to buy goods. At the end, we come out, we're happy, right? So we look at what we purchase and we're like, wow, I am satisfied. And we will basically tell other persons about it, recommend the company to other people, all right? To provide a stock of goods that will provide a selection for customers. You don't want to just have one item in stock. You want to have a variation. And in having variations, this is good for you, the company, because remember now you're providing for different people. We have different personalities, different preferences. So if I should come in and I don't like the color that you have, you'd probably just have red, then I am going to want to go to somewhere else where I will get the preference, my color that I love. So you want to ensure that you have variations there, all right? To take advantage of quantity discounts. And we mentioned earlier about buying in bulk, because the more goods you would have purchased, then the less you will have to pay. Economies of scale coming into play here again. All right? I hope you're paying attention. I hope you're grasping the information that we are going through right now. All right? And if you have your questions, don't be afraid to ask, because me still I love the interaction. So if you have your questions, you can just say, Miss, I have a question, and we will listen to what you have, all right? Because I want to ensure that everybody is on the same page, all right? Let us now look at decisions to make about inventory. Of course, in businesses, we're going to have to make decisions. It doesn't matter what area. We will have to make decisions. Might be it is just a simple decision, whereas it might be more complex. So you have to make decisions. And in doing inventory, we will have to make major decisions as well as, some simple ones on a day-to-day basis. Where should stores be placed and why? This is a question we should ask in our business. So if it is that you have different branches, you are looking at location. Which area is it best for us to put this type of business versus that type of business? So you have to do your research here, all right? What should be stored there and why? We're looking at storage, because in having goods, in having inventory, we need somewhere that we can store these items, right? Because we are going to need a warehouse. So where is it that is going to be the best location for a warehouse? We have to think about that, all right? How much of an item should be stored and why? How much item should we have in the storehouse? Why should we have this amount of items? Why is it 10 units and not 20? So the decision is based upon your company, what you want to achieve, things like that, the type of product that you are producing, all right? How long before an order is placed? And we're looking here at safety time. So remember now we're producing goods. So how long will this take to make 50 items? You have to consider all of those factors. How to find and keep track of what is stored. Remember now we have to go into the warehouse and we need to check off. So we need to know that, okay, we have the Lasco, we have the toothpaste, and we're not running out, right? So if we're operating a supermarket, we have to go in on a daily basis, right? Some businesses might do that probably 2 times per day, because you do not want to wait until the end of the week, right? And then you realize that, oh, we're out of stock. What are we going to do? Customers are coming in, they're complaining. We don't have what it is that they need. So you have to ensure that at all times, you keep a check of what you have in the company, in case you should go and do a reorder. And we're getting to that shortly, All right? How to move or use items from different stores. So again, location come into play here. The different warehouse that you might have for storage for your products. What is the minimum or the maximum for each item and why? As a business owner, you should make the decision as to your lowest point that you want as it relates to the unit per for your product, as well as the maximum. So do we have space for 1,000 units? That can be the maximum. We don't have more, so we're gonna leave it at 1,000. Do we have space that we can probably just have 500? It all depends again on your storage. So once your storage or your warehouse is large enough to accommodate it, then you know that you will have to make such decision based on that. All right, are we following so far? All right, very good. Let us now look at a trivia question, because you know we got so much information just now, so I want to see that you're following me. All right, which of the following best describe inventory management? Think about it. Let us look at the responses. Management and control of services, inventory and equipment. B's answer, management and control of inventory. C, control of materials purchased. And D, management of financial resources in the business. Which one is the answer? Let me see if you're following. What is the answer? Very good. C is the answer. So you're looking, B is the answer, not C. Management and control of inventory. So we're looking at how is it that we go about managing the stock that we have in the business. So you're very much correct. So B is the answer here. Awesome. At least you're paying attention. All right, so let us continue. We have different types of inventory. So we would look at what is inventory management, right? So we're going to be looking now at the different types of inventory that we might have in a company. So I have another short video for you just to watch so that you can learn the different types of inventory.
Types of inventory. Inventory comes in different forms. Therefore, different types of inventory, such as raw material, work in progress, and finished goods can be found in the supply chain. Let's take a look at Woodfern Inc. to explain these types of inventory. Woodfern Inc. makes and sells wooden furniture which they deliver to their customers. In this example, they are making a dining room table. Woodfern buys large pieces of wood from their supplier which will be used to make the table. The wood is stored in a warehouse in its original state and at this stage is known as raw material inventory. Woodfern also imports teak wood and is therefore required to pay import duties and other miscellaneous charges to customs in order to take full ownership of the wood. While the wood is with customs, it is known as bonded inventory. Once it is cleared, it then becomes raw material. In order to make a table, the raw materials such as the wood and glue and screws are used. These items are moved to the factory and used in the table manufacturing process, therefore becoming work-in-progress inventory. While the wood is being transformed, factory workers will use items such as cloths and cleaning agents to clean the parts of the table. These items are known as floor stock inventory. They are used during production, but do not become part of the final product. Now that the table is finished, it is moved from the factory and stored in a warehouse waiting to be sold. Items ready to sell are referred to as finished goods inventory. Woodfern offer their customers a specialized wood polish for their furniture. This polish is optional and if a customer purchases it, it will be delivered with the furniture. While Woodfern keep the polish in their stores, it is not seen as being part of their inventory and is still owned by the supplier. This means that Woodfern do not have to tie up capital or money in inventory that they potentially may not sell. In this scenario, the polish is known as consignment inventory. The table has been sold and is loaded onto a delivery truck. This inventory being delivered is known as distribution inventory or goods in transit inventory. The inventory is now on its way to the customer. Defining inventory types helps identify the state and location of inventory, and this can be used for transaction, tracking, and reporting purposes.
All right. What did you learn from that video? Anybody would like to share what you learned from that video? All right, one person, let me hear you. Go ahead. Very good. Awesome job. You were listening, man. All right. So from the video, you realize that you will have your raw materials, and in order for you to get the finished product, there is a process that the raw material, everything should go through. So you have the different types. You have your raw material. What else do you have? You have your work in progress. All right, so we're going to be looking at all of this information in more detail. So at least you were watching the video. Very good. All right, so let us look at the different types that we have now. All right. So we have the first one here being raw material. What is raw material? Very good. These are the things that you need in order for you to arrive at the finished product. Good. So you need a different ingredients, stuff like that. So let us look at the video now. So what would have been the raw material in the video? The board or whatever it is that they need to make the table. So whatever you're putting together now would have been the raw material there. Awesome. Work in progress. What is work in progress? This is saying that, okay, you have started the job, but it is not completed as yet. So there is not a finished product coming out of the process as yet. So you're putting things together, right? So that is work in progress. So we have it probably laid away or until, in factory, we are finished, and then you can deliver the final product to your customer. So work in progress there. Another type, you have maintenance or repair supply, because we're going to need all of this, because remember, we're looking into factory. So maintenance is a must, repair. And why is it that this is a must? Because remember, we're looking at different machinery, different equipment. So therefore, you're looking at advancement. So you don't want it to be a case where, if it is a case where your machinery is broken down, that is it for the process. You cannot continue the job. No, you want to ensure that you're there to repair, and you're basically maintaining whatever asset you have in your company, so that at the end you will be providing quality goods to your customers. All right. The other one here, finished goods. This is a type of inventory as well. So this is the final product, and coming out of the video, the final product there would have been the table that the customer would have received. So you know, you have to go through the different processes within the factory, and then that final product now would have been the table. So we have a picture here, right, of a bag here where you're using the raw materials, which is the yarn. Here you can see different colors, right? So we know persons are good at knitting and things like that. So the finished product now would have been this lovely bag. Wouldn't you want one of this bag? I know, right? I would want one too. All right, so we're looking at the different processes. So now we're going to be moving on now to importance of holding inventory. Why is it important for you to have inventory in the company? Regardless of which type of inventory our firm has and the cost involved, it is important to hold inventory, and we're going to look at why. Firms may do so for a number of reasons. We're going to be looking at a few of them. All right. So the first one here, materials can be purchased in bulk, and we mentioned that earlier, right? To benefit from bulk discount, and also to reduce the cost of transportation for regular purchases of lower quantity. For example, 2 or 3 months worth of stock could be purchased at once. Why do you think so? Why don't we just go out every month or every week to purchase what we want? Very good. Again, we're looking at money. Remember, we're here to make profit, and we do not want to just be spending. If it is that we can save, then therefore our profit will rise. Understand? Very good. So therefore, you're looking at how is it that we can go out to buy in bulk, having the inventory so that if it is our customers coming again, we can provide for them. So we don't run out of stock. Remember that word we mentioned earlier? Stock out. Awesome. So you want to ensure that you have just enough for your customers, just enough for you to produce whatever product your customers want. All right, so it's very important to note that. The other importance here, holding stock ensures that materials are readily available when needed for production. This will prevent the firm from running out of materials, especially during critical times, since the supplier may not be able to deliver the raw materials as fast as the firm may need them. It is advisable to hold stock. Let us look at this one, and this one is very, very important, because remember now, you want to ensure that your customers, they are satisfied. So in holding stock, you're looking at you having the materials there. So if you should get a phone call from one of your customers, you know, this is an everyday customer and they're spending money with you, so you want to ensure that they're getting quality for their money. If they should just pick up the phone, they normally order every month in. But for some reasons, their business is building, it's growing, so they're getting more customers. So they pick up the phone and they call you in mid-month. Remember, they normally order at the end of the month, but they call you mid-month and say, oh, you know that we run out of stock, can we get some goods? You have the stock readily available for your customer so that you can provide for them, and at the end, they're providing for their customers. So if you realize there, it is a win-win for both companies. So please ensure that you have your stock. I don't want to come and purchase goods and then I hear that, oh, Miss Taylor, we don't have any, we don't know when we're going to get. That is not good for business, so we don't want to have that, all right? The other one we're looking at, the firm can respond to changes in demand quickly. So if we have the raw materials here, we have them in the warehouse. If we should, for some reason, have more customers coming to us, that is good for us. At least we're not looking at, oh, we only have 50 customers to cater for, so we don't need more stock. Remember now, you don't know when you're going to get good responses from other people, and it's going to be out there. So people are going to hear about your company and they're going to come to you. So you're getting new customers. So you want to ensure that you're providing for them. So you have your stocks readily available in the event that demand is there for your products. All right, let us move on to the other one. For expected future surges in price, if the firm is expecting that price will increase in the near future, it will hold enough stock in order to take advantage of the increase in price. So we're looking at scarcity here. You know that when it is very hard to get different items, you know that the price is going to go up. So you want to ensure as a business now, you have enough in your warehouse. So if you should hear that the product that you normally purchase is now $2,000 per unit, you would have already purchased a lot. What you need for your company, of course, for instance, 1,000. So you would not be paying that additional 1,000. So therefore, the price increase will not affect your company. All right? Stock is held as a safeguard in case the supplier encounters unforeseen problems and the lead time becomes longer than expected. Because remember, we don't just have machines working in the company, we're humans and we do make mistakes. So we know that sometimes our employees, they might be ill, and therefore sometimes production is going to decrease there. So even though your employees might call in ill, at least you would have the raw materials, you would have whatever stock available to ensure that you can cater for them. All right? Are we learning? Awesome. Inventory control. What is inventory control? This is the means by which materials of the correct quality and in correct quantity are made available, and as when required, with due regard to economic in storage and ordering costs. So you want to ensure that as it relates to the materials that you should get, it is the right quality. You don't want to ensure that you're giving customers goods that they are not satisfied with. So you have quality delivery to your customers, all right? The objectives of inventory control. What are the objectives? To ensure smooth flow of stock. You have what you need, so you don't have to be running all over the factory. You have it right there in the warehouse. To provide for required quality of materials. Here again, quality. To control investments in stock, so you know where your money is going. You know what it is that you should probably stop investing, or what it is that you need to start investing in, all right? Protection against fluctuations in output. So in the event that your demand is rising or probably decreasing, you know what to do. Minimization of risk and uncertainty. Because remember, we don't control everything. So we want to ensure that even though we don't control everything, our business is on top of things. We know what we're doing as it relates to the inventory that we have in our warehouse. Risk of obsolescence. You don't want to have things that are outdated. Nobody's buying them. So why do you still have it in your company? So you need to get rid of it, all right? Minimization of material costs. So the amount that you're spending, you're basically looking at, decreasing that a little bit, all right? So those are some of the objectives of inventory control. But what is the importance? Inventory is a significant asset for many companies in the largest asset. So we're looking at inventory, looking at stock. Again, this is an asset to the company because this is what the company owns. So this is ours. This is our asset, right? And this is one of the largest assets that we can have, our inventory, because without inventory, without stock, what are you going to provide for your customers? So you must have inventory, all right? Inventory is central to the main activity of merchandising and manufacturing companies. Mistakes in determining inventory costs can cause critical errors in financial statements, and you want to ensure that you don't have this issue in your company, because putting false information out there, if it is that you're recording the wrong stock, you're pricing your goods at the wrong price, you're using a different pricing strategy from what you used yesterday. You want to ensure that you're always on the right or the same, you're being consistent. So you don't have false information. When you check your balance sheet, when you check your income statement, they're saying the very same thing, all right? Because remember, the information as it relates to financial statements, it will be public. Inventory must be protected from external risk, of course, such as fire and theft. And we know sometimes we have internal fraud by our employees. So you want to put proper things in place to ensure that, okay, in case of a fire, our stock is secured. In case of any theft or anything, we can track those items. All right, so you want to ensure that you put things in place. We have some benefits of inventory management. This is a diagram just showing you a few, right? Enhance productivity, improve delivery performance, of course. We're looking at the bigger picture now, right? Being a successful company because you're providing quality goods to your customers. You know how to manage whatever inventory you have in your warehouse. Excellent return on investment. Streamlining of the workflow, reduce risk of human error, and we mentioned that earlier, and better visibility. So those are some benefits that we have of inventory management. Concepts of inventory control. In controlling stock, management has to be aware of 3 concepts. I'm just going to look at 3 for today. Maximum stock level. What is this? It is the maximum amount of stock that the business can hold based on its objective or storage. So then again, you're looking at your storage space. Do I have enough storage for 1,000 units versus 500? So what is the maximum? Is it going to be 1,000? Is it going to be 500? That is a decision for the business owner to make. Reorder level. What is this? It is the point at which a new order will be placed and to replenish the stock. So this is done to prevent firm from running out of stock entirely before the new order arrives. Again, we mentioned earlier, we do not want it to be a case where if your customers come in, you don't have stock for them. So ensure that you're always checking, going into the warehouse, doing your checkoff to know that you have your stocks in place, ready to sell to your customers. Minimum stock level, and we can say that this is the opposite of your maximum. So if you should have 1,000 for your maximum, what is going to be your minimum? Is it going to be 100? So ensure that at all times you don't have below 100 stock in the warehouse. All right, and the lead time here is the amount of time between placing the order, so when the customer places the order and when they receive that particular order. So that's the lead time right there. In inventory management, we have challenges. Of course, we must have stock in our company, but what happens if we have too much stock? What happens if we have too little? Let us look at them. Increased cost of storage. So if we have too much stock in the company, we have to think now about more storage. In thinking about more storage, we need to think about money because we have to spend for storage. Wastage as a result of spoilage. So if you have a lot of stock and depending on the type of product and you're not selling, right, it's not going out as fast as it ought to be, you're gonna have spoilage taking place. Liquidity problems. So because you have the stock here in the warehouse, you're not selling fast enough to get the cash in hand, so therefore it is tied up in the company. You have the stock, but you're not selling to customers, so therefore money is not coming into the business. Stock may become outdated because you bought so much, because you heard that, oh, discount, let me just get a lot. So you're looking over the maximum that you would have for your storehouse. So instead of the 1,000, that's the maximum, you went out and buy 2,000. So now you have it there, it's not selling, it's outdated. So you're losing right there. So you want to ensure that you don't have that happening in the company. We have a trivia. In inventory management, the reorder point is, which one of these answers do you think is the reorder? A, awesome. The level inventory will have reached when delivery is made. And somebody said, Miss, you just mentioned that. At least you were listening. Very good. So we look at having too much inventory. What about having too little? Increased risk of loss of sale. If you don't have what it is that your customers need at hand, then you're going to lose out on sale. You're losing out on money. Increased risk of supplier price increases. So because you normally go in every month, and you stop going in every month, now you start going probably 3 months or so forth. Therefore, price might increase there, all right? Decrease bulk order discounts. You're not buying as much as you ought to, so you're not going to basically get the economies of scale there. You're not going to get the discount for bulk, because the more you buy, the less you will pay. Increased ordering costs. So these are some of the things that we want to look at. Not to have too much inventory, not to have too little, but having the right amount in your company. All right, so we have a class activity, and I hope that you will complete these questions so that I know that you learned something today. Remember, go over your notes, because it is very important that after class, you review the lesson. All right? Very good. That's all for today. Today, we've been discussing inventory management in CAPE, management of business. I hope you would have understood the points we discussed today. If not, you can catch a repeat of today's lesson on JNN Today at 4 p.m. and in class time. Highlights of the week's programs are also on Saturday between 1 and 4 p.m. and on video on demand on One Spot Media. We also have 2 channels to help with additional lessons devoted to students of all ages on One Spot Media School Time and School Time Maths, so check them out. Any questions? Send them through to the Ministry of Education's and Television Jamaica's social media pages. We want to make sure you're understanding what is being taught. Remember to keep safe, Wash your hands regularly, sanitize, and wear your mask.
Hi there, I'm Simon Preston from TVJ. Thank you very much for watching our YouTube channel. To see our latest videos and also to see live events, click here. To see our full videos on onespotmedia.com, click here. Thank you very much for watching.